I'd like to introduce you to our next speaker, and her name is Retha Hill. Retha is the Executive Director for the New Media Innovation and Entrepreneurship Lab through the Walter Cronkite School of ASU Journalism. I had to practice that about 100 times before I could get it all out. Retha has been working on the cutting edge of technology and journalism, the infusion of those two things, for over 20 years. She began her journalism career in high school, and after she got out of college, she took a position in journalism with the Washington Post. So she has been with the world of media and technology for a really long time. In her presentation today, she's going to introduce you to the concepts of 360 video, immersion sandboxes, and as a math person, I love this, thinking in spheres. When I saw her rehearsal yesterday, I have not been able to stop thinking about what she talked about and how I might be able to use these ideas in my classroom or just understanding it in the ways that I look at the world. So I want to welcome you today. I want to welcome to the stage Retha Hill, and be prepared to change the way that you think about media and the sharing of information. Retha?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Look. All right. Hi, good morning. How are you? All right, so I want to talk to you a little bit about what's going on in journalism. You know, it's a hot topic these days. I wonder why, right? So let's face it, the news media are in trouble. Audience, credibility, and revenue are all down or taking a major hit. Young people particularly are not tuning into legacy media at the rates that their parents did. You're not picking up the daily newspaper, come on, admit it. You're not tuning in to the nightly news at 6 o'clock to see what's going on. Young people, particularly Gen Z and millennials, are getting their news from blogs, from Facebook, from Snapchat, from Twitter. And they're moving away from what we call legacy media. And then trust is at an all-time low. Now, this has been going on for some time now in terms of how people view the press. But recent attacks on the news media has accelerated this with charges of fake news. News companies then are understandably anxious to find ways that they can reconnect and re-engage their audiences. They're asking, how can we reach people? How can we get people to tune in to us? And this is part of a larger debate that's been going on for some time, for decades really, in terms of what is our relationship with our news consumers. I think most of us understand in journalism that we can no longer just create news and then our audiences will passively consume it. That relationship is gone. As you can see in this picture from the 1960s, where people sat and watched the nightly news. They tuned in to Walter Cronkite and some of the others and passively kind of consumed that news, and then some of them took action. And that brings me to the immersive sandbox. Media companies around the country are starting to experiment with ways to fully engage and touch our audiences. And I want to go through a few of those now. So 360 is the first one I want to talk about, and that's video that puts the viewer into the center of the action. Now, how did this come about? Although 360 video has been around for a few years now, it wasn't until 2015 when the New York Times dropped The Displaced. The Displaced was an 11-minute documentary that looked at the lives of 3 refugee children. There was a little boy from the Ukraine. There was a little boy who lived on an island, a small island, really no bigger than this stage, with his grandmother in the South Sudan. And there was a young girl who was a refugee from Syria who was living in Jordan. But the thing that the New York Times did that was so special is that they mailed out 1 million Google Cardboards, little cardboards that you can configure, drop your cell phone in it, and then enter a world of 360. By looking around, you could see the lives of these children. It was like you were walking in the footsteps and in the places where these young children lived, and you had a sense of what their lives were like. That one thing was a phenomenon. all of a sudden people started thinking about 360 video, started thinking in spheres and how you could actually engage people in ways that we couldn't do before. Since then, a lot has happened. Since 2015, the New York Times has the Daily 360, in which every day you have a different piece of 360 immersive content. CNN has its own YouTube channel with 360 content. The USA Today network, which includes the Arizona Republic here, has a weekly show called Virtually There, in which every Thursday you get 3 new snapshots of life through 360. And that's everything from what it's like to be on an aircraft carrier when a jet is landing, to what it might be like to climb the highest mountain in the world, to going beneath the ocean. They give you that sense of it. So 360 has been a real boon for journalism in terms of touching and engaging our audiences, and people are starting to really warm up to it. The other things that have happened is that there are a ton of new startups. Riot is a company that started a few years ago to bring kind of social justice reporting in 360. It was quickly snapped up by Huffington Post. Within and Jaunt are 2 other startups that are creating amazing 360 video. At the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism, we started experimenting with 360 back in 2015, right around the time that the New York Times created The Displaced. We sent students, about a dozen of them, back and forth to the US-Mexico border over the course of about 13 weeks. We gathered all kinds of footage from the shelters that are right on the border that help people when they're trying to make a decision whether to go back or to cross into the United States. We talked to Good Samaritans who left water out in the desert so people wouldn't die of thirst. We went to the medical examiner's office and got a 360 film of these doctors and the artifacts that people find out in the desert, and these medical examiner doctors who are trying to identify the dead. We talked to ranchers, we talked to border control, and we put together a 7-minute documentary that went on to win the National Association of Broadcasters Pilot Award for Innovation. Because what we try to do at the Cronkite School is show the rest of the journalism world how you can do a lot of what the New York Times and the bigger boys are doing, but to do that cheaply and to do it effectively. But something else happened that amazed even me. That one story led to the creation of a company called Terraneo VR. So about a handful of students, 3 or 4, decided to create a company where they would do this type of immersive documentary journalism. I'm pleased to report that after almost 2 years, it's still in business and it's in the black. Terraneo VR founder Carolina Marquez is here. She's working on a second 360 documentary with the $17,000 Google Jump camera. They were allowed into this program and to use it over the course of about 2 months, including this fancy stitching software, and we're hoping that that video will also explain what's really going on in the US-Mexico border, and people can see it for themselves rather than what they hear on television. Not being satisfied there, we wanted to push the envelope a little bit more, and that brings me to mixed reality, which is a combination of VR, technology, and 360. With mixed reality, we're bringing in animation, we're bringing in true virtual reality and interactivity. This is a screenshot of a small documentary we did called 25 to Life, in which we told the story of a woman who's been in jail for almost 15 years now for doing something that, of course, she admits that she had no business of doing. But what we wanted to show was what her life was like in her prison cell. We recreated a prison cell from the Perryville Correctional Institute where she is, down to the amount of food that they're allowed to have, the amount of books that they're allowed to have, and we told her story through a combination of these photographs you see on the wall. Now, when you're in the 360, you can look around and see all of that. But then we have photos that will pop up and tell her story from the standpoint of her daughter, from the standpoint of her parents, her best friends, who knew her when she never got into a lick of trouble, and talked about the unfairness of her being in this situation. We even inserted a video that popped out of the little small television that they are allowed at the cell that will give you context of the 40-year-old war on crime and how presidents after presidents, starting with Nixon, declared that we have to get tough on crime, and then it wrapped up people like this woman. So that was an effort that we did with mixed reality. But then there's AR. Now, AR, I think for me, is the most exciting because not only because it reminds me of Star Trek, which is one of my favorite shows, but because I think it's easiest for people to consume. AR is content that's superimposed on the real world. Now, you have your smartphone or you have a Google device on your hand or goggle device on your head, and you're looking out into the real world and you're seeing all kinds of augmented content. This is an example of some content that was created by a company called Magic Leap. Magic Leap is down in Orlando, Florida, and already it's valued at $6 billion, and that's even before releasing any product into the market. What they've been working on is a set of goggles that will allow you to experience augmented reality without having these big Oculus or HTC Vive headsets on you that tether you into a computer. So they've been working on this, and they finally announced that these goggles are supposed to come out sometime this year. But I want you to take a look of what it will allow you to do. So watch, it's very quick. It's not going to be up there very long. That's augmented reality. And I, for one, can't wait for it to be a thing, you know? So augmented reality now has been out for a few years. Back in 2010, I created an augmented reality app to tell you about Black history in 12 U.S. cities. So you come up to a marker and you glance through your smartphone and you can see all kinds of information about something that happened in that exact spot. It took me about 6 months to build the database to work with the technology that was limited back then. But now it's become a lot easier. Unfortunately, some of the local news stations and people who are experimenting with augmented reality are doing things like this, which is to talk about something and have a photo of a shark kind of pop into the newscast. You can do that with motion graphics. So that's not what we can do with augmented reality. Augmented reality opens up this world to be able to tell you about things in so many different ways. And the new technology that's come out in recent months allows journalists and other content producers to use this content and to create amazing stuff without having to hire a whole team of people. In June, Apple released AR Kit and then followed up by Google releasing AR Core. So it's making it really easy to do incredible things. One of the things that I love a lot about it that people have been starting to experiment is something called the portal effect, where you're in the real world, and if you look here, you'll see that you're in a basic street, and then a portal will open up, and you can actually step through that portal, and you enter another world. Now, of course, gamers are creating a game world that you can go into and fight aliens or whatever it is. But for journalists, imagine how much we can do to step back into time and see what happened before, or step into the future and see what might be coming. We're working this semester at the New Media Innovation and Entrepreneurship Lab on a project that will allow you to step back into downtown Phoenix to see what it looked like just 10 years ago. Even some of my seniors don't remember when all those funky little houses were down on Roosevelt Row. They've all been most of them have plowed over, and we've got all these high-rise apartments and condos going up. But then you'll be able to step forward in the future and see what some of the new plans are. So that's how we can be using this new technology. Walter Cronkite, who is the namesake for our school, loved to take people to places. He had this show called You Were There, in which he'd take you back to the Civil War and take you back to all kinds of things. He also loved the space program. And this was him sort of taking a model of the lunar module or landing module and showing it off on television. But we're no longer limited this kind of like, here's a thing and see what's happening and the astronauts will come out of here. Now with augmented reality, we can do this. Using volumetric, VR, and holograms, this is an example of how one of my colleagues captured Buzz Aldrin, captured him in three-dimensional array by having cameras all over and making him into a hologram and then inserting him back into historical photos or a model that they've built of being on the moon. The great thing about this is that as a consumer, you can walk around him. You can see all the things that are there. It's exactly like you were there. And this is so exciting for what we can do to show people the world as it is and not from a faraway standpoint. There's a huge opportunity with these new technologies to really engage our audiences and to increase empathy and agency. Because we believe with this new technology, we can get people to sit up and pay attention again and not look at the news, glance at the news while they're cooking dinner, talking, exercising, or whatever it is. We want people to pay attention because that is how we continue to create a free country. Now, is this going to take off? Or is this just a fad? Of course, none of us know. But one of the things I do know is that people are starting to pick up the technology. 1 million headsets were sold just in the third quarter of 2017 alone, and that's the first time that that happened. So people are starting to buy some of the tools that they need in order to view this content. Now, most of that, about 50% of those sales went to Sony, which is the maker of the PlayStation. Now, many people have PlayStation already in their homes, and they're adding on the VR component. So we believe that more and more people will be able to see this content that we're creating. Oculus, which the maker of the Oculus Rift and Touch, just dropped their prices to $399, which is under $400. And that's, again, a way to get people to purchase some of this equipment, even as Oculus are working on smaller packs that can fit on the back of your back so you're not, again, tethered to a high-end computer. And also in March, a new movie directed by Steven Spielberg is called Ready Player One. And I'm thinking that it's going to do for virtual reality what the movie Minority Report did for the whole notion of hand-based gestures. Virtual reality in this movie shows how the earth has been ravaged by climate change and all kinds of other things, and the way people go to school, live their lives, go on vacation, interact with people is all through virtual reality. Now, of course, it's Spielberg, so it's got to be over the top, which I'm counting on, because I think it's going to get people like super excited, and then they're going to want to experience this content. So for journalists, it's an exciting time for us to embrace this new technology and embrace how we can reach our audiences in new and different ways. We have to get back to or stay with our mission, which is to report the news, to explain what's going on, and to facilitate conversation, even if those conversations are difficult, and to speak truth to power. With this new technology, we'll be able to bring people from all parts of the country together. We'll be able to show them what it's like to live along the U.S.-Mexico border, to live in Mexico, to live in different parts of the United States. We'll be able to show them what it's really like to be in certain countries in Africa. And not all of them are like they've been portrayed recently. We get to take people to amazing spots all over the country and all over the world with this new technology. I'm super excited. And for journalists, we have to embrace this. We have to not be afraid of it. So many times journalists are thinking that this is going to be the thing that will destroy journalism. But they said that about radio, they said it about TV, they said it about the internet, they said it about social media. But I'm pleased to report that young people are learning this. My students are learning to code C#. In 1 month that they've been back to school this semester, they're already coding games in order to teach them to know how to produce content in this new market, in this new medium. From there, they'll learn how to do even more sophisticated things like the AR portal, volumetric VR. And then as they graduate and take jobs in the industry, in journalism, in public relations, and media, they'll be able to take those skills out to the rest of the world. My students are creating jobs for themselves. They're creating new ways of storytelling. And this is what new technology can do for us as journalists, but also for our audience. The future is now. Thank you.
Retha.
Yes.
Oh,
You're that clicker. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
All
Thank
right.
you so much.
Thank you.
How'd you like that whale? Was that cool? Oh my gosh, I literally could not sleep last night because it's just blowing my mind. So, hey, I'm here to tell you you're going to get a short break, but that doesn't mean you can leave and not come back, all right? Because we got some really cool stuff. After break, we're going to learn about maker spaces. We're going to learn about sock people and stick puppets in economics. We're going to learn about accessible learning environments for your students. And last but not least, we're going to get a whole list of life hacks. So go get refreshed, take your bio breaks, come back, and get ready for a great second half. Thank you very much.